are talking about Bach double, both parts at once. So let's play first of all. There's a music stand if you want it. Do you know both parts?
I almost know both parts.
Okay.
I'm interested in trying it without the music.
Okay, great.
Just because we're together.
Okay. Yes, let's tune. Just listen to mine. So that's a perfect demonstration of that thing of when you're listening to an oboe, the frequency's different. Not the frequency, I don't know the science. The sound is different, so you can compare the sound you're listening to with the sound that you're hearing underneath your ear. But when you have two violins together, it just kind of creates a big A, and then when you listen to one after another, you can hear that it's not exactly the same. Or that you can hear if it's not exactly the same. So, which part are you going to play? Two.
Lucy's.
Should we play one? And you're going to try it without the music?
I'm going to try without music, but I want the comfort blanket of it being near me. I've put it to the second page already. I think I'm alright with the first page.
Alright then.
Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
builder out there going. Very sweet.
Oh, I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to sit and talk about teaching points, but how would we help a student who has got to that stage, Joe, with their Bach double? What's the recipe?
Lots more listening, lots more playing. Playing, just air bowing on the train, looking like a lunatic. Breaking it down into sequences, making sure that, especially when shifting into second position that I'm shifting, finding the ringing notes to help my intonation there.
There's something I'm sure that you are thinking of, but you haven't said yet, which would be the first thing you would need to say to a student. When you can play the piece, but the difficult bits are eluding you, what do you need to do? Boxes. And I wonder if you would care to be open and honest with us, or just in your own head, how much do you think, yeah, that's exactly what I need to do. I just need to buckle down and do those boxes 100 times a week.
Yeah.
You know, how much you think, okay, it's not that for me. Because if it's not that for you, then you need to find what it is that means it's still...
It's kind of both. It is that for me. I think I do need to do the boxes more, but I've been doing the boxes.
Right.
Well, my own boxes, because, you know,
Yeah.
the teacher one. But I've been doing that, which, like I said to you last time, is what makes it so infuriating that
Yeah.
when I then get to that point, I'm like, I can play this bit.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've done it enough. I think
that's also exactly what happens with all of us, and also with our students. And one of the things you have to say to them is that's why you must make sure that you don't practice until you've got it right. If you're doing your boxes until you can do them right at home, then as soon as you're under any more stress, like playing with someone else, playing in front of someone that you're slightly nervous of, or just playing in a different environment, it's going to go back to where it was however many weeks ago.
Yeah.
And therefore you've got to like keep doing those boxes until, you know, you can do them under stress, rather than get to the stage where you're like, okay, I've got that, and then stop. And then I think the other thing about that kind of scenario is like sometimes that can be when you have to practice it, you know, slower getting faster until it's way too fast, and then you can come back to what feels then like a comfortable tempo. Rhythm practice, practicing tiny little chunks, and then expanding that chunk. So, you know, for example, which we're going to talk about because that's one of the big challenges of this piece. But, you know, think, right, can you do the last 4 notes? Can you do the last 8 notes? Can you do the last 12 notes? And build it up, bit by bit, rather than just keeping the same practice box all the time.
Yeah. I try and surprise myself as well with it. And I sometimes just go straight to, like, there's 2 bars in this part and there's 2 bars in the first violin part that I'm like, they're the wild card. Everything else is kind of related. But those 2 bars, man.
Are you talking about the bars I was just singing?
No.
Which bars are you talking about?
Find it now.
And are you talking about a memory track or
No,
fingers?
I think even melodically and everything about it is just a bit different to the count to everything else. Like the way it moves is different. When I find it, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well played, done with very great sensitivity and an awareness of each other, which is really lovely. I think, Joe, I would say when you get to the stage where the notes are more secure, you can think more about a little bit lighter and steadier tempo and lighter articulation. Not so. It's not that you're playing at legato, but the notes are a bit long for my personal preference in Bach.
Okay.
I'm just going to check that is recording.
Not quite so heavy.
Very open to it.
Sorry, Hannah?
Very open to it not having recorded us.
Do you want me to stop it and then we'll just have the recording of us talking about it?
It's probably more useful not having us. Well, I don't know. What do you think?
I'm just along for the ride. I'm cool.
I think we'll leave it. It's nice to hear people.
And actually, I can see where I've messed up.
And also, if you're watching, and also if you're watching it on a train or something, you know, it's useful to listen to people play it and look through the music when you can't necessarily. And also, particularly with Bach double, you can't play it by yourself at home. The whole, you know, both parts. So, okay. So if we're going to think in broad brushstrokes about the style of this piece, it's not a particularly new style for the students. It's quite like the Vivaldi. It's definitely a big step up in terms of the development of right and left hand coordination and the difficulty of some of those little phrases and boxes. But it's not like perpetual motion, which is a whole new, like, right, we're going to develop our bowing, you know, from detache into spiccato and through to sotio in that piece. I think this is a piece that really shows how good your shifting is, and it's also a piece where lots of the shifting is voluntary. So it is possible, like with the group, the top group here, we learnt this for the piece, for the concert in October, quite an informal concert, and I just made a copy of the like tutti sections so that the students who weren't on this piece yet could learn the tutti sections. They actually almost all ended up playing almost all of it, but we did take a lot of the shifting out for the kids who were still on like sites concertos, because obviously that's one of the things that makes a big jump for them. But I wouldn't really recommend that you do it all in first position where possible, because
The sequences and patterns, kind of, they're just really useful to
exactly, and also that, you know, you want them to feel that shifting is something that's going to happen in most of their pieces, rather than still a sort of special thing that they have to worry about and get ready for. I approach this, I do use the book 4 and 5 music normally. I was just not using that because of the group thing that we were doing, but normally do it one page at a time, or one section at a time. So the first section, so I'm looking at the Violin 2 book 4 at the moment. The first section, they would go up to the end of 21. And then the next section, they would go to the end of 51. Or possibly the tutti in 53, you know, it's up to them really. And then to the end of 76. And then to the end. So it is definitely a multi-credit piece. Tell me when you run out of things to do.
Well, I think I've done the structure. I mean, I'll have to look back on the recordings as well.
Okay,
Yes.
well I'll talk you through it in a minute as well. Okay, well why don't you go and practice Beethoven, which is what we're going to do next.
Yep.
This afternoon. Thank you. In terms of preview, the boxes I would take out ahead of them getting to the piece. And I mean, the end of book 4, I think you have to become more flexible, because you've often got teenagers playing, they've often got loads of other stuff going on by this point, they've got orchestra music and, you know, new pieces for group maybe, and so they don't sort of trot through book 4 in the same way as they have books 1 to 3. I become much more flexible about learning pieces off by heart, because I think it's one of the things that often really slows kids down, and so they get from about Vivaldi third movement, which, bear in mind, I do after perpetual motion, so they do learn perpetual motion off by heart, but Vivaldi third movement, I would quite often say that's the point at which they don't have to learn their pieces off by heart unless they're going to do it for a solo. Even then I'm quite flexible about it. Something like Bach double, you know, it's really nice if they do a group performance and it is off by heart, but I also think, you know, if it's going to put them off, basically, it's that fundamental, isn't it? Like, once again, we remind ourselves that the fundamental thing is motivation. We want them to keep wanting to play, and if memorising is a really big chore for them and it doesn't come easily, and lots of people will tell you that's because they haven't done enough listening in their lives, but I can confirm that that is not true. My daughter has listened every single day, not quite, nearly every single day of her life, and she finds memorising really hard, and it's just one of those things that doesn't come easily to her. And it's not a simple, I think it's a cop-out for us to say, oh, you just need to listen more. Like, it's not that simple. You know, it's an attitude thing, just like everything else. There are people who find it easier and people who find it harder. And most musicians never play anything off by heart. Like, this shouldn't be our fundamental priority. Our fundamental priority is to play with beautiful tone and intonation, right? And good posture so you're comfortable, because that is important for any kind of music. But if you think about most professional musicians, like, who are the people who play stuff off by heart? Concert soloists, 2% of the professional musician population, maybe? Like, so why is this such an important thing for us?
Classical professional, like the fiddle players all play stuff off by heart. Like, very rarely will you see them with sheet music.
Yes, that's true. But that is
And they know
learning by ear, isn't it?
Yeah.
That hasn't been learnt off by heart. Which I think if you...
What do you mean?
So the difference of... If you've got a child who learns something by ear, they haven't had to go through a process of learning it off by heart. Like, that learning has happened naturally through absorbing it by ear, by listening. And that, I think, is different to saying to a student who can play something really beautifully with the music in front of them, now you've got to learn it off by heart. And, like,
Do we need
obviously
them
off
to
by
learn
heart
it
is
by ear?
the same. Bach double by ear?
I don't know.
I wouldn't think that many people could learn it by ear. Partly because you can't tell which part is yours. I mean, on the recordings you do have them separately, and it definitely will help. But I think there is a stage, you know, like we've been talking about with the memory traps and the structure and keeping the map in your mind. I think those are really helpful, and I think for younger students it's really good memory training for life generally. But I think once it gets to the stage that it's like, okay, well, it's going to take you another month to get this credit because you can't learn it off by heart any faster than that. Or you can get your credit now and learn it off by heart if you decide that that's a piece you want to play for a solo.
Do you think it's become harder to learn things off by heart because of the way that information is now so available? We don't, like, because we've got Wikipedia, we don't need to know all the details of...
Well, less memory training in general.
Yeah, there's
less need for memory recall.
I don't know what's happening in schools, but, like, my guess would be that, like, our parents' generation were learning a huge amount of facts.
And phone numbers.
And phone numbers.
Even just looking at something as simple as that. I mean, I couldn't tell you what Kate's phone number is after only 20 years. It's like, it's that need for the recall. And there is research to support that concern. There's a lot of books I've read on memory that state that very thing, that actually we don't need to use our recall in the way that we used to, and we don't necessarily need to use maths, even something like that, in the way that we used to.
Well, I'd like to posit a more optimistic version of that, which is that maybe that frees up our education system, and although I don't think it does, I think the education system is still, you know, making children learn their times table and their spelling, even though it's not necessary in and of itself like it used to be. But I do think that maybe that gives more space for lateral thinking and problem solving and, you know, ideas about... No, I'm not seeing that in mainstream education, but I mean in terms of how we are responding to that. That, you know, that there's a possibility. Anyway, so yeah, I, you know, there are lots of people who aren't more flexible about memory at this stage. It very much depends what kind of teacher you want to become. It's an individual choice for each of us to make. But I think it's something to bear in mind that you will have students who are majorly slowed down by learning everything off by heart, and if you decide that that's a priority for you and your students, then you know you'll find ways to deal with that, and it may be that you pass those students on to someone else who doesn't care so much. It may be that they decide to quit and you think, well, that's, you know, their choice, whatever, but I think it's something to be aware of, whatever decision you choose to make about it. So the preview boxes that I am doing in advance are the one that's written out on page 24, which is bar 28. And we're going to talk about how to prepare these in a minute. And bar 40 and 41. Bar 60 into 61. And bar 75. So there's, broadly speaking, one on each page, apart from the very first page for the second violin part. So that's, you know, like as they're starting the first page, you would be giving them the preview box for page 2. As they're starting page 2, they would then start the preview box for page 3. It's not that all 4 of those boxes are done in advance of ever starting Bach double.
So what's the last box? 75?
75, yeah.
Yes, got that, yeah. I'm very glad that I've put very similar boxes for myself.
Yeah. Very good. So one section at a time. I'm doing, you know, my normal kind of credits thing where they can play it. It may have a couple of small mistakes. The bow might not be perfect. It might not be off by heart, but it's pretty much there. And then they go on to the next section, and then we're going into book 5, coming back and putting all of Bach double together in one go for the big credit. And then I also do a duet credit because it's much more complicated for them to play it against the other violin part, or rather with the other violin part, but by themselves. And so that often, you know, is something that happens a lot later and takes a few weeks in itself, not of most of each lesson, but of a little bit of attention each time, how to get those rhythms really sitting nicely together, really understanding their syncopation, really knowing what's happening in which bit, how to play, you know, the parts that are the solo parts out and the parts that are accompaniment less, and then which bits are like half and half. Any questions so far?
No. Oh, by the way, I think my 2 bars are bar 34, 35.
Oh yeah, I was wondering if it's that. It's the F sharp, isn't it?
No, it's a C sharp for me. C natural and C sharp. In bar 35. I think.
Well, that does fit in with the harmony much more readily than the F sharp because it's the leading note.
Yeah, but it's a change of C natural to C sharp. It just feels like it's a lot. The intonation in those 2 bars. And in the first violin part, it's the that bit, those 2 bars.
Yeah. Okay, so the boxes I have for ticks are boxes, tone, memory, intonation, and clean shifts. I think probably style should be in there too.
Could you say that again?
Yes, sorry. Boxes, tone, intonation, memory, clean shifts, style, and at this stage I'm still putting in the lines for the shifting positions.
Coloured lines for shifting.
So that they can see where they're going up, where they're coming down. If you've got kids who are very confident on shifting, they may just want the first finger number in the colour, and then to come down a black, you know, pencil finger to remind them where they're coming down. But most of mine start doing that in book 5, maybe even book 6. Does slightly depend on the age and the sort of, you know, mood of the student about stuff like that. Some of them start to feel like it's very babyish to have coloured lines in their music, and others don't care. So it depends. If you've got a 15-year-old who's sort of feeling self-conscious about only being in book 4, that's likely that they will want to move to that system earlier. Whereas if you've got a 10-year-old, then, you know, probably be quite happy for you to keep doing it into book 6. Okay, so my repetition boxes, I mean, you know, obviously it's specific to each student and what they find difficult, but it's very unusual for me not to put halfway through bar 4 to halfway through bar 8 in a box. Partly because of the C sharp and the G sharp on high 3s going up that scale, partly because of the hooks, and then that shift in bar 7. And that's just a 5 or a 6 box, it's not a 10. And then just straight away from the 4 on the semiquaver in bar 8 to the end of bar 10. So that's really important that they get that in tune, and it's very often not. Slow bow and hook the bow. Slow bow and hook the bow. Shift. And to get that G sharp there. So that's one box 6 times, and then this one. That's the next box. And for those chromatic, 2s and, well, it's only the 2 that changes there, isn't it? And the rest of that,
Are we expecting anyone? There's a woman at the door.
Weird. Maybe it's Devon and he's changed. Rude.
Remember what Helen was saying about 4 fingers? The 4th finger in bar 10. I had to make a conscious decision to actually bring my elbow around to get my pinky together in tune. I have a feeling I should be writing this a bit neater.
on the day, and also we've got one. Yeah, I'm still like coldy, but yeah, much better. Yeah.
Alright, so I'll leave this
Thank you, love. Yeah.
and yeah, keep me posted.
Great. All right, darling. Bye. Excellent. Sorry about that. Instrument and music delivery. Right. Some of them will need help with the second position sections. I would, try to avoid just turning them all into third position because we feel more comfortable in third position. Because we want to raise a generation of students who feel just as comfortable with second as with third. It's really hard, isn't it?
I'm getting there. Tonalisation is second position now.
Yeah.
That's been a game changer.
Good. Do you ask them to tell you the telephone number? Have I talked to you about that?
You mentioned it, but
I'll remind you. So, what happens a lot with second position tonalisation is they play, and then by the G they've gone into fourth position because they can't remember to use the low 1 on the E string because it's kind of weird. So we talk about what's the telephone number for second position tonalisation, 2421, and then once they get to that 1, they're they know where they are. And I just say to them, what's the telephone number? And they go, 2421, and then it really helps to just think ahead. Okay, so let's grab violins when you finish writing those up and have a look at these preview boxes.
I might get a stand.
Yes.
yeah, it's a low one. I feel like a low one, doesn't it? G natural rather than G sharp. You need to kind of pull it back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's green finger position, finger pattern. We haven't done very much for.
Oh wow, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so once again, what find in the book needs a little bit of changing. Because what's actually written, certainly in my copy, I don't know if they maybe have fixed it in yours because some of the typos they actually do fix. Page 24,
I've got an older edition.
after the arrow, 3213, I can't even see what was written underneath. They've forgotten to put in the natural. I mean, it's just a mistake.
Where's this?
The second half of the Bach double line, number 1 on page 24. Do you have a natural?
B natural?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Do you, Anna?
I think it's that one. Yeah.
Good. Well, that's good. Okay, so first of all, let's play very slowly the bit of music beforehand. So from here, that tempo, ready, and... And you're staying up in third position now.
Ooh, that's what I didn't do.
You did. 2, 1, 4, 3, 2.
I shifted up for the 3, 2, 1, bit F, E, D, but I shifted back into first for the rest of that part.
Oh, okay.
From the C sharp, I shifted back.
Yeah, so you might want to write a 4 above the C sharp,
Yeah.
or put a red line, or both. I don't personally use a 4 on the E. I just think why? It's just sort of tricky, even more tricky. There's enough trickiness. So then, if you look at the crotchets, let me just have a look at what you've got written. If they've fixed it up. No, you don't have to be natural.
Which one? What? Oh, that one. Oh, sorry.
So if you had a student who was very by the book, looked at that and did exactly what it said, rather than using their initiative and working out that it relates to this, they would practice something completely wrong. And why? I don't understand. It's like the wrong... Why are they changing to a C sharp, to the 2 on the C sharp?
Yeah, that's weird.
Because the 2 is on the G natural.
Yeah, it should be.
It's just wrong. So make sure that you add the natural and change the C sharp in the second bar to a 3, so that what you're practicing is, yes, you want to keep the 1 on, put the 3 on where the C sharp is. And actually, if you think about, if you look back at where it's printed, the actual music, you can't keep the 1 on, but you just want to do that for that exercise to think about the hand position. And actually, then you could miss out the next 3 notes and just do the last 3. That's what you actually need to isolate. So I don't quite know what they were thinking there, but I do it as it's written, but just with the right fingers, because it just gets too complicated to take out loads of notes from them. So we do that 5 times, and then expand it into the actual box. And then the next line down, let's just play, so page 27, bar 40. That one. Sorry, Joe. Okay, one more time. So. Now, what I'm doing here is open A,
the low 4 for the first G sharp in the
Yeah.
bar.
So I'm using an open A, so you can see it.
Okay.
So A4, 2 as the last three notes of bar 40, and then at the beginning of 41, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then as you'd expect. Which means that I do scrub a bunch of these notes out in that exercise to get ready for it. They play open A first, and then they just play 4, 2, 4, 3, because we don't need any of that first bar. So let's just play that. And I think, you know, if they have problems with their bowing, then make sure they start on an up, but if they don't, it doesn't really matter. So we'll start on an up, open A first, and then the second bar of what's written there was low 4, high 2, low 4, normal 3, up bow A. G sharp on 4, 2, a tone away, 4 again, and 3. That's the sort of knotty bit, isn't it? Yeah, and then they can see when they've put all of those fingers down that that is, I think it's the black finger button, whatever colour it is that's got them all in one go.
It's black's all together, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's black, right?
Yeah, they're all a semitone apart. Your 4's too high. So that is exactly what happens. They get it right first time, and then it slides up. And the second one. There you go. Lovely. Good. Okay, so then we'll play the actual music again from before that. I find it very weird how they've set it out on the page. Never mind. We'll just do that as written one more time. So contract. Expand.
Well, I like the words.
Thank you very much. So we do 5 the box on the right of the page, and then 10 the box as it's written on the left.
Turn my elbow forward for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And you know that sort of feeling when you're like
Yeah.
trying to like cross your fingers, and you very much feel like you're trying to get one finger under another. And kids often are doing this all the time, aren't they? Especially if they're a bit fidgety. Like they really know that feeling of like just trying to tie your fingers in knots kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think when I have students like, it's like, yeah, you're trying to get your 3 sort of under your 4. And like the 2, you know, it's all just those sort of, those movements of like, yeah,
No, it's
squiggling around.
Yeah.
Good. Any questions about any of that?
No, that makes sense. I mean, there's also a bowing mistake as well, isn't there? In that the second slur should be 3 notes off the 4, right?
Where exactly are you talking
The
about?
4th finger after the open A. There.
Oh, my copy doesn't have that
Ah,
mistake in it.
mine's ancient.
Yeah, 3 notes in all of those slurs.
It's amazing how many mistakes you can make. Maybe they just didn't have a definitive version of it.
It just needs to be copyright.
I think they did. I think they just didn't have copyright please, thank you, yes. Anyway, right, so violin 2, page 29, 75 to 76. This is another preview section, and it's just the one that's underneath on the same page. So, this is a very challenging section. What are the challenges? Let's just play it slower than that first of all. That kind of tempo. One challenge, Joe.
B flat, shifting back into first position, making sure you pull it back.
Thank you. Another challenge.
Shifting through from third, second, first, and making sure you land the shift well, and also
Good. Can you?
change the stretch.
Excellent. You do. That's all the challenges. Very well. But why are the shifts difficult?
Because they're happening quickly.
Yes. Something else about the shifts, Joe?
And they're quite close, like they're,
Can you be more specific?
you're going down by a toe,
And then.
and then a semitone.
Yes. So it's not the same shift. That's one of the things that makes it difficult. And the finger patterns change every time. So this is how, Joe, would you mind just videoing me doing this? Because although it's on there, it's in the middle of the whole hour.
Yeah.
And then you can put it on the
Post it.
chat. Thank you. All right.
Hold on. 10 seconds. We'll do this. Okay. Perfect shot.
Ready?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So bar 75. That section is one of the most challenging bits in the whole piece, in either violin part, I think. So how you want to approach it is think about the shifts first. You've got a whole tone shift and then a semitone shift. And then, obviously, that's easy. So with the students, I would do literally my turn, your turn on that. And then you've got red finger pattern. So a minor third between 1 and 3. Retake, go back to the 1 and do the shift you just practiced. Then you're in yellow finger pattern, so you've got a major third between 1 and 3. Back to the 1 and do the shift. And then you're in blue finger pattern. Minor third again. Right, so we play whole tone, semitone, then we add the second of each pattern, find your note again. And then you may want to add that B flat there because that's what's challenging about that bit. And then we take out the shifts, but they need to still measure it. So the left hand's doing exactly what we did the time before, but you're just not playing the shifts with the bow. And then you can add the rest of the notes. Stop, measure that whole shift, whole tone shift. Stretch. Stop, measure that semitone shift. Stretch back, stretch out, stretch back. And contract. Expand. So it's about the shift, the finger patterns, and then at the end, expand, contract, expand. And so this is a really good thing to do in group because it's quite boring. It's like repetitive. But you know, you can just do my turn, your turn, get different kids to lead which bit they're doing. You know, make up different little tunes that they can play using those notes. But that's essentially why that is so difficult, is the finger patterns change every time, the shift distance changes every time, and then at the end, once you get into first position, should be a relief, but then you've got that expansion, a contraction, and then another expansion. Okay. So let's just do that together. Thank you, Joe. So first of all, your tone back. Ready, my turn. Ready, play. Tricky, right? Measure your semitone back. Ready, play. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do that. Okay, and then we'll play it as it is. So I'll do it in chunks. My turn, your turn. Ready, play. Take your bow off, measure your tone back. Pick up your one, be brave, my turn. Ready, play. Good. Measure your semitone back. And I just finish this off by the time we get to there. Lovely. And then you can go to playing it as written without the gaps. Alright? Good.
Cool, thank you.
So if you look at your music, you've got that kind of written out. They choose to think about 4, 3, 4 at the end instead of do, 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 B flat. I think really the work on that section happens once you put all the notes in, because you can either think about pulling the hand back or pulling the foot up and then back, but either way you're going to miss one of the challenges until you put it all in. And as you just saw, I don't worry about the bowing until they're putting it all in context. Bar 27. I do not like that shift onto the 3 and then the 4.
Sorry, what bar?
27.
Right.
I play guide note, but of course you do not want to hear, or even worse. So just be careful with that. Then we've got the box 28, 29. That's the preview box we've just been talking about before. And then they definitely need 34 and 35 plus one note as a repetition box, 5 slow, 5 medium. They can use rhythm practice here, they can use a metronome starting very slowly and then going faster, or they can just do it how it is.
Where is it important to use the metronome in rhythm practice and where not, as a kind of general rule?
I think most of my students hardly ever use a metronome. It's one of those things, I hear other teachers teaching with a metronome, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I never think about using a metronome until like okay, really. I think the thing is, playing with a metronome is really helpful for keeping you in time. If I've got a student who plays out of time a lot, I would much rather they play with a piano accompaniment or with a video of the music than with a thing that goes kick, 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 kick in their ear.
Or maybe just do it with boxes.
Yeah, so I think most of mine, I say that they can do it with the, if they find it very difficult to do boxes slowly, I will give them a metronome marking to use. And ask them to play with the metronome, because otherwise they just speed up. I don't use a metronome for rhythm practice because I think I want them to have the freedom between the fast notes to think about the next two for as long as they need, rather than it just turning into da 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 da, like a bit of a kind of muddy mess. Like to get that da 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 as quickly as I can, da da, even if they need a big gap in between, and vice versa. And then looking at the rest of my music, I think that another thing I want to say is not a massive round at the end. There isn't actually anything printed your parts what's on my part from the book. Is that alright?
Yeah, I'm starting to do that.
Great. Are your brains turning to mush, or can we just quickly look at the first violin part because it's mostly going to be the same? Yeah, and then we'll be done. I do think that Devin's okay.
Yeah, it's strange for him to hear from him.
I think he's probably confused his half-term dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is possible. He doesn't teach it, does he, in schools?
No, well, at all, I don't think. Right, okay. Anyway, so we can get about it. This one some time. So the boxes are going to be the same. I haven't actually written them into my part.
Okay, John, put the violin down. Put the violin down.
What do you mean by the same?
The tick boxes.
Tick boxes.
Sorry, that wasn't clear.
Do you teach your students both parts, or do you just teach them one? Or how do you say?
I approach them in the same order as they are in the books. Apart from often, like I said before, group makes a difference to them. The group really, I think, is such a vital part at this stage for the kids who are not mad about violin. Often the kids who are mad about violin are playing in the school orchestra and a youth orchestra of some sort, and sometimes, doing other things, like folk, for example, or jazz or whatever. And so the group is not their sort of glue, but I think for a lot of the kids who are just sort of still, strolling through Suzuki in a fairly laid-back way, but have got to this stage just because they haven't given up, which is brilliant. The group is often their sort of main thing that they care about. And so, for example, students like in that situation that are in my top group here at the moment will have learnt, I just allocated the first violin and second violin parts according to who I knew was kind of most able to learn the music out of context easily. And so there are some students in that group who had done this first violin part and then went back and finished G minor, Vivaldi and country dance, German dance, Veracini. But then there are other students who weren't in that group who just went through book 5 in order. And then there are kids that haven't learnt all the pieces in book 5. I think, like if you, for example, I won't name names, but thinking about one of my students in particular, she likes the violin, she doesn't want to quit, it's very much a relaxation thing for her. She's doing her GCSEs, she practices and has practiced most of her life for maybe 3, sometimes 4 times a week. So it's an amazing achievement that she's got as far as she has, really. But, she did the first 2 pieces of book 5, no, 3. She did the first movement of Vivaldi G minor. She can play the slow movement fine. She doesn't really want to grapple with the last movement. It's such a huge piece of music. She's not really that into Vivaldi. She desperately wanted to do country dance. German dance she just sight-read. Veracini she wanted to learn. Bach double she learned for group. But, I'm not going to make her go back and do the Vivaldi G minor 3rd movement if she doesn't want to do it. We're doing stuff from solos for young violinists, doing other pieces in group, Chardash, the trio one. If she doesn't feel like I haven't finished book 5 properly, unless she's done every piece, then I don't mind. And that's exactly in line with what Dr. Suzuki said, that the violin concerto stage is the stage at which he wanted it to be more appropriate to each culture, and I think he meant geographical culture at the time, but I take that as also meaning, your sort of social and musical culture that you live in. If you want to play more folk, if you want to do more, band stuff, if you want to do improvisation, if you want to do more pieces by black and female composers, if you want to do, all of those things that are kind of absent from these books, I think this is a good time to start being more relaxed and not feeling like you've got to finish each piece in each book. I feel a bit sad when people miss out pieces in book 1 to 4. I kind of think, like, I've met loads of kids who just, I didn't learn etude because it's too hard.
Yeah,
And I just think that's a real cop-out on the teacher's part.
Yeah.
And I understand because it's a hideous piece to teach in the middle of book one, but you know, I think by the time they get to this, you are plugging the gaps elsewhere, whereas if you miss out etude, you're just missing it out, you're not plugging that gap anywhere else.
I love teaching etude. I used to hate it, and I got to a point that I have to do something about how I'm teaching so I don't feel like that. And it did change.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't noticed it being too, but maybe I've been not perceptive enough.
You set it
Or
up
maybe
right
you
enough.
have excellent approaches for
Exactly.
making sure that it's not a brick wall.
If it ain't broke, don't fix
No,
it.
because if I think about it, it's a bit like it is a brick wall for a couple of my students right this second. So
Yeah.
it's something the overview.
Okay, so I don't think I've even put in every box that I would expect the students to do, because by the end of book 5 I'm hoping that, you know, you're going to be taking a more proactive approach with your students choosing their own boxes, and also with you as teachers being able to look at a piece and go, right, that needs to be in a box, not for me to be sort of spoon feeding.
So do you ask them what should be in a?
We'll often say by book 5, can you go away and look at this piece? For example, the first movement of Vivaldi G minor. Right, go away and try the first page out. I'll put the shifting in for them, make sure that the actual information they've got is what I want them to use, and then I'll say, okay, can you come back with your suggested boxes, and then we'll talk about which bits they put in boxes, why they needed to, whether they missed out something that should be in a box, etc. And delightfully, in bar 36, hi love, hello. We're just going to finish off Bach double and then have lunch. So if you want to finish now, we're going to come back at 1:30 for lunch.
Okay, that's more you.
Yes, it is. Delightfully, we have. Which is exactly the same, hurrah! They will still need to practice it, but they should be able to use the same approach, and also it should be pretty much under their
So it's
fingers.
over a string, but otherwise it's.
Yeah. 35, the end of 35, 36, 37.
Yeah.
And the same at 44. That is 44. That's literally the same music. You can see it in the other one in bar 40. The big challenge here, which is more difficult than in the first part, in the second violin part, is that bit, because of the second position and third position placement rather than using first position as your base. You can see it in the second violin part in another part of the music. Ah, yes, 50. So that's something you need to approach in the same way as we did before. What finger pattern are we in?
Red.
And sort of shifting between yellow momentarily back into red. And then a semitone down. Shift your one back even more, or not shift, pull your one back even more. Then that means that you sort of feel like you're going up a tone, even though you've only come down a semitone. But you know, unless you've been ignoring second position, by this point they should be pretty good at that. And then beautifully, bar 59 is the same, but just over a string. So that's sort of not two equally difficult boxes. The one helps the other.
Sorry, I still didn't hear that number again, that last one.
So bar 52,
Yes.
and then 59 is the same,
Thank you.
but over a string.
Yes.
And I guess the bit that we didn't talk about in the second violin part. Which is in a box you'll see when you go through the music, but you know, that's how to approach that. And then bars 67 and 68 are just very sort of fiddly. So that really is just reps.
Fiddly. Box times.
Fiddly.
Box times 30.
By that you just mean the changing finger patterns.
Yeah, and the string crossing for the bow.
Okay.
Yeah. 73, 74, 75. Really tricky for intonation. They really need to know when their two is best friends with one and when it's not.
Tricky for the two.
It's the three as well. I mean, it's just all of that chromaticity. Let's play that when you've written your notes. You just end up with a lot of students playing that all just not quite in tune. Let's play from there to the end of the piece. And then it'll be lunchtime and we don't even need to half past.
So we're playing from the beginning? Or
No, let's play from the top of that page. Second bar.
what bar
Bar
has
72. Why don't you just take that out? It's even perforated for you to be able to do so.
Yeah, I'll cut it out because it's not perforated that way.
It's that old one. It's alright. Second bar of the last page, yeah? Lovely, well done. Great, thank you very much. Let's have a bow. A piece of preparation over half term, please. Could you copy in all of the things into your book fives so that when we go through it, you're prepared in advance rather than doing it in retrospect?
Did you put that in Dropbox? Or did you put it in? So
I think it's on the WhatsApp group.
I found book 4 in it, but maybe I just gave up searching. I think I'll look again.
I'll have a look. Okay, bye.